Now listen, what I'm going to talk about might anger you, but it might be only because you didn't listen to my whole video. So I'm not going to try and give you a long video so I can get through my point, but I want to visit with you about a crisis that's going on. And it seems as though there's a lot of people out there kind of shifting the focus in one direction when really the focus needs to be in a reality. And the reason that I know the reality is that I'm living the reality. And what I'm talking about here is in the tax profession, the CPA profession. So if you're not involved with this, it might be interesting to listen to it because I'm going to be talking about kind of a global issue here. And the only reason somebody might get angry is I'm going to be talking about what other people are saying, and I'm not going to necessarily respond to it or tell you who it is, but I'm going to give maybe just the other side of the coin thinking about it. And sometimes people don't like that because if they're stuck on only wanting to look on one side of the coin, they don't like it if somebody's wanting them to just look on the other side of the coin. So I'm just wanting you to consider some things, and the reason for this is what I told you in the beginning. This is a real crisis. This isn't a YouTube video hook for you to watch it because I said a crisis. The crisis is 75% of me, people that look like me, starting with I'm 52. That's the average age of a CPA. 75% of us will be exiting the profession in the next 10 to 15 years, okay? So that's the average age. There are tons that are retiring now. In my town alone, and I live in a small town, we had 3 CPAs retire just in the last 90 days, and 1 passed away in the last 6 months. And talking with my local society, the Oklahoma Society, I know of 10 firms just in the state that have had to just simply close down because there's no one to buy these firms. And so there's an opportunity here. So I'm glad that you stayed till here. There's a real opportunity, even if you're not in the tax industry. And even if you don't think you want to become a CPA and you want to go back to school, I'm going to tell you about an opportunity that you may have nonetheless. But the crisis being with 75 exiting, 75%, right now we have about 675,000 CPAs. I'm recording this in 2024, near the end of the year. And that means, if you take those numbers, we're going to lose around 500,000 CPAs, okay? And right now, we have about 18,000 new CPAs coming in every year. Now, a few years ago, it was 20,000, then it was 19,000, it's 18,000. It's only projected to go down because less and less accounting students are taking the CPA exam. Now, there is a way out of this that's already happening, and that's what's angering people for whatever reason. But I actually see it's not necessarily a way out the way people are seeing it. And it's not a way out, it's a way to expand. And we just got to reverse our thinking. And you know me, if you've watched my videos before, I'm a pretty level-headed guy. Most of you don't even know what party I'm affiliated with politics. So I'm usually trying to get down the line. I give you things to think about. But if we're doing the math here, if in the next 15 years, we bring on 18,000 a year and it goes down, run the averages of it going down, maybe we bring on 200,000 CPAs in the next 10 to 15 years. And you think, well, that's a lot of CPAs, but this is nationwide. This is in the US. So if we have 675,000 and we lose 500,000, rough math here, and we gain 200,000, we have a 300,000 shortage of CPAs. And not really just CPAs. We're overlooking the retiring generation that are enrolled agents and tax professionals. And so the crisis, though, with the CPA is different from the EA because there's more entering the profession as an enrolled agent, which is an IRS designation. I'll give you a link to that if you're interested in it because you don't need a degree to become an enrolled agent. Rigorous test, it's not easy, but nonetheless you get a designation as a tax professional. But with that being said, What I want you to hear is that with my family, we have been in the CPA tradition, the tax tradition, the public accounting tradition, helping small businesses and Americans just like you. Our family for 70 years has been in this business. Started with my grandfather, Omar Abbott Slater, CPA. 1954, he became a CPA. His oldest son, Chris Slater, CPA, was a CPA. And both had their own CPA practices. I became a CPA. I've been in the business now 32 years. I've had my own CPA practice for 27. And I'm a CPA, so I'm third generation. I'm so excited that my son has joined the practice. He's been working with me for a number of years, but he's on his way to be the fourth generation CPA in our family. And he chose it on his own. I never even suggested it to him. But what is really the reason that we have accounting students saying, you know what, I don't want to become a CPA, or I don't even know if I want to take accounting? Well, a lot of people will say, and I'm not discounting this, but a lot of people would say that it has to do with there's a 150-hour college requirement to become a CPA. And in most states, I think all states, you can't even sit for the CPA exam until you have 150 hours. Now that 150 hours is 120 hours, for a 4-year degree plus 30 extra hours. It's not a master's on top of it, it's just another 30 hours. And in that 150 hours, you have 30 hours of accounting that's required. So I'm just kind of having fun here, but I mean, literally, you could get a 4-year degree and then just get college credits in a lot of electives, and people usually say, golf or basket weaving, but it's true. There's no requirement to have any more financial or economic or accounting classes. It's just more hours. And I get it, because a lot of people, they've gone for 4 years and they're like, why do I want to stay in school another year? I get it, okay? And given that you can't take the CPA exam until you have your 150 hours, well, then you're embarking on it, and it is one of the hardest exams, I think, on the planet. Now, of course, anybody that takes other exams would say, no, it's not, but I'm just telling you, it is difficult, right? The fail rate is high. So with that being said, it usually takes somebody at least a year. I mean, you do have some folks out there that they might just knock it right out. But on average, it takes somebody about 2 years to get the 4 parts passed currently. And with that, I think this is all states, but I know it's in my state. I know it's in Texas where I got originally licensed. You also have to have 2 years of experience working for a CPA. So it is a high hurdle. And so we got to have 150 hours, we got to pass the exam, we got to have the 2 years of experience, and then boom, you get those credentials right there, CPA. Now, one of the things that my grandfather told me was, JJ, when you become a CPA, you will have those letters forever. Now, I've had some goofballs that have commented, well, you got to pay your dues every year to be a CPA. Clearly. But you'll have those letters forever, okay? It will be on your tombstone, he told me. And if you go and look at his grave, it says Omar Abbott Slater, CPA. He said it becomes an identity. And worldwide, people know, especially now, what the CPA means. When I walk in a room, it has nothing to do with JJ the CPA. It has to do with being a CPA, that before I even walk in the room, people already know, okay, it's a CPA coming in. They have an image. They have a mindset of this person worked hard. They have integrity. They know a lot of stuff about numbers and money. And quite frankly, a lot of people assume I know a lot more than I do. And I have to tell people all the time, I don't specialize in stocks and finance and budget. And I'm not the best spender of money, right? But all I'm getting at is that when we're now looking at becoming a CPA, you take on an identity, okay? So it's not just a credential, because you can have a credential after your name, but it's not really an identity. The only one that I can think of that's like truly an identity would be in the medical field, and it would be a doctor, or in the educational field, somebody that's gotten their doctorate. So if you're in the educational world and you go, it's Dr. Robert Jameson, CPA, got his PhD. Or I've got clients, it's Dr. Sam Smith, Dr. Sally Moore. And you would immediately go, wow, okay, they probably know something. And think of it this way, if you're with a doctor and they look young, kind of wet behind the ears, and you have a nurse standing next to them, and that nurse has clearly been around the block several times. Who do you look to most of the time on where you want your advice, whether it's fair or not, right? You got this wet behind the ears, you got this nurse that probably knows way more than this doctor right now. I'm having fun here. All I'm getting at is you go with that. So literally, it's kind of unfair, but when I'm at a table and I've got a banker and a lawyer and a financial advisor and the client looks to me. I mean, they trust everybody in that room. It's trusted advisors. But they look to me because in part the CPA is meant to be impartial. We're kind of ingrained with this. Even though we don't do audits in my world, we're ingrained to have professional skepticism, to have independence, that we have to make the right decision for our client regardless of our benefit. And that's what goes along with the CPA. It's been told to me so many times that the CPA is more trusted than any other profession. In fact, behind the clergy only, but we are the most trusted professional in the world. So when you take on that identity, it's something special. And so if you can get to all of these marks and get those letters behind your name, wow, that is something you get to keep, and it has an identity. And it doesn't matter if you're in public accounting or tax. What I tell students all the time is, even if you decide you don't want to work with numbers, you don't want to go into tax, you don't want to do an audit or anything like that, if you're an accounting student, get your CPA. Because even if you're working in a charity, you're creating a new religious organization, you are helping at school with the PTA, or you're helping with the soccer team, or you start a new business, or you go into marketing or advertising, or you decide you're going to be a roofer, or you're going to sell Cokes, or you're going to be a salon owner, or you're going to be a stylist. I mean, pick any profession. And if you're a CPA, you will be automatically more trusted. You will automatically be given more credibility, whether it's fair or not. You'll automatically be seen as somebody that knows what they're doing. And so you have a value in that because it's an identity. And so I don't want that identity to be lost. And in part, it's personal because of my family being in this for 70 years. And so with my son, let's say he's in the business another 30 years. That means that our family will have had this CPA tradition for 100 years. That's a reality. So when I'm now looking at protecting it and just wanting the legacy to continue that my grandfather instilled on me, I just feel it's special. Of course, it's special to me. Now, just a side note, when you talk about somebody that's like, well, I didn't go to college, but I want to have my own business, or I want to be a tax professional, you can go the enrolled agent route. It puts you as a tax professional. It doesn't give you any training about accounting or economics or marketing or business law or anything like that, but it makes you a tax professional in kind of in a starting way, and it puts you on equal ground with a CPA and a lawyer in the eyes of the IRS in terms of being able to represent your client. So it also has a designation and a real standing in the tax world, and especially with the IRS. And okay, so maybe you don't want to go the EA route because you've been doing it forever and you're a tax professional. But a lot of tax professionals and EAs and CPAs are leaving the profession because we're getting old. And as we have more and more of us exiting, like I'm telling you about right now, we're already overloaded. I hadn't taken on a new client since 2018. When my son joined the practice, I said, well, I guess we'll start taking on new clients. So what is now the angry part about this? Well, people are saying, and I told you earlier, I'm not discounting that you have people that say, well, it's the hours and the education. I'm not disagreeing with that, but I don't think that's the reason. Because there's still plenty of people globally that want that designation and will work that hard. And we're still having it here. But I mean, it's gone down like 50 to then 50% to then 50% to only 18,000 coming in a year now. So the next thing, though, is that they'll say, well, the accounting industry doesn't pay enough wages, or the accounting industry is needing to be more flexible, or you need to work at home, and the younger generation, they don't want to work, for the pay that they're getting. I'm not discounting that, even though, if you look at all the professions in the world or in the USA, CPAs are well compensated. Everything's relative, depends on where you live, right? So, somebody who's been doing this for a while, 5 years, you probably could get better statistics than me, but the last I looked, you might make around 100 grand. That's a lot of money, okay? So, with that being said, I think the real issue, though, is really about one thing. And I'm guilty of it, and I want to tell you about it in a second. But what people are now also pointing at, and I get it because it kind of seems popular, and maybe if you're not thinking about it, maybe this just seems, it might seem logical, but it's not logical to me. And I'm going to tell you why I don't think it's logical, and it's based on what my grandfather told me when I started my practice in 1997. So I'm going to wrap this up here in about 3 minutes because my wife just came in and we got to go to lunch. But what people are saying is that the accounting industry, the CPA industry specifically, is offshoring jobs to other countries, specifically India, and now I'm hearing a lot about Latin America. And what then people go to next is, well, it's because, which I haven't even fully researched this part, but then they go to, well, it's only because it's less wages, and it's just like everything else. You offshore it because you're going to be able to go hire cheaper labor. Okay, let's just put that on the shelf for a minute, okay? And we know that if you have a manufacturer and they close down, and they take that overseas and they hire people, that closed down and moved overseas. So I would say, yeah, that company went overseas. Yeah, those jobs went overseas or in another country, right? And I know there's other ways that could be done in the software industry or whatever the case is, right? But remember what I told you, we have a declining population of CPAs and EAs. We don't have a big influx of CPAs specifically. We seem like I have a decent influx of EAs, so good job, EAs. So the problem is, first, the crisis I told you. We don't have enough people looking forward to do the work that we need to do. Whatever happened here, whether we want to blame the hours and the credentials, which I told you again, I'm not discounting that. Or if we want to blame the compensation, okay, I'm not discounting that. If you make 100 grand, but you're in New York City, it's like, man, that's not enough. I get it, okay? So I'm not discounting these things. But I think the reality is what I told you I did and I no longer do, and I think the actual problem is the workload, okay? So when you have a young person looking at me or looking at a CPA firm or a tax practice, and just what everybody knows is you're going to work a lot of hours during tax season. You're going to work 10-hour days, 12-hour days. You're going to work 6 days a week. And the more experience that you get, the more responsibility that you have, yeah, you might make a little more money, but it also means you're going to work a lot more hours. But it's also because we don't have enough people, okay? But since the beginning of time, what has been customary in this industry is that you're going to work your little hiney off during tax season. And I did. And I had a stroke, and I was 272 pounds. I've lost 117 pounds. I had downsized. No sob story here. I'm doing good. But what I'm telling you is, I realized, finally, having a life-threatening situation in my life, that it's the workload. It's like, kind of like light bulb, or should have had a V8, or duh. But when we talk about the workload, first, pause. We now have folks willing to take on that work in these other countries, India, Latin America, other places maybe. They're willing to take on the work. Like there's a workforce there to fill a gap. I mean, I was on a call with about 15 CPA firm owners just here in Oklahoma. And all of us are like, anytime we've posted a job, no one fills it. Like we're lucky to get it filled within 6 months. Point is, I don't see that a job is being offshored if no one's taking a job that's open, right? Does that make sense? So wouldn't it make sense? So the American Institute of CPAs was like, well, if this is a crisis that we're having, if we are going to maybe use workforce in other countries, then we want to ensure they're qualified. We want to ensure that they're meeting the standards. And therefore, the US CPA became available in India on 1/1/2021, so not that long ago. And I don't know about Latin America. I'm sorry, I didn't research that before I did this video. And I get it. I went over my few minutes. I'll try and wrap up in 2 minutes. So I'm glad you got to hear, because the reality is this, okay? Let's put all of that aside, okay, for 1 minute. Credentials, the hours, the test, the experience, what's the CPA word, put all that aside. Compensation, put it aside. Put India aside, Latin America aside. Put down the workforce aside. Put down where our crisis is. Put it all aside. Put it all down. Put it all down. Put it all down. Okay? I just wiped the board here. Here's the reality that may anger people. Only because I don't hear anybody talking about it. But what did I tell you? It's something that my grandfather told me when I opened my practice in 1997. Now, he was telling me about it in terms of Oklahoma City, where I practice. He said, CPAs are not your competition. They are collaborators. And there's no way any CPA or any CPA firm can do it all. So you don't ever see a CPA as a competitor. He went one step further to say, if somebody comes to you and you see on the tax return that they are with a CPA, you call that CPA out of respect and you say, I'm visiting with your client. Should I take them on? Did you know this? What's the deal? And I've done that a number of times. And it was just older generation. And I told that client, go back to your CPA, because all you're telling me is you're not calling them. You're saying, well, my CPA doesn't call me. I'm like, well, does your dentist call you and say, hey, you need to get in here? Maybe they send you a postcard, but your dentist doesn't call you and you don't get mad. Well, my dentist didn't check on my toothbrush and my dentist didn't figure out if I was flossing. Of course not, right? Who else checks on you? Point is, I tell that client, you need to be interested. Call that client, call that CPA and say, hey, in your email, say, I want to spend more money with you. I guarantee you'll get their attention. I called those CPAs and I said, hey, listen, it happens. My point is there's respect. And I'm not saying that anybody's disrespectful here. Maybe. But when my grandfather told me that, I stuck to it. But here's the reality that we're in now. Because the thing that he told me was the CPA is an identity as a whole, the reason it's as powerful as it is, the reason it has the integrity, the reason that it's respected, the reason that it's worldwide is because of all of us. So the less of us, the less valuable. So I look at the CPA as simply a designation. And I don't understand why anybody's upset that the American Institute of CPAs is allowing other countries to get the US CPA designation, especially knowing that if their workforce is going to be helping American CPAs, shouldn't they have that accreditation or that credential? Yeah. And why are we angry? And I'm going to tell you something that's going to probably make you angry. Why are we telling people that we're offshoring? Why are we being angry at India and Latin America for getting a designation and saying, hey, we're here to help? That's all they're saying. We're here to help. They're not taking any jobs. And then people will say, oh, but it's cheaper labor. Let me tell you this, okay? Look it up. Look it up. Don't you dare assume it. You look it up. I'm going to make you do your own research. But when you pay whatever people are paying to CPAs in India, it is a lot of money to those that are in India. So I'm told. Like people are quitting other jobs to become a CPA because the compensation that they get, if it is less than a US citizen, is way more than what they have in other jobs. So that's now not us offshoring jobs. That's just a currency difference. Our currency is worth this that can buy this much currency in another country. Look it up. Okay? So my point in saying that is, why are we angry about that? That's just a currency issue. Quite frankly, if it was the other way, we probably would still be going to Latin America and India because there is no one to fill the gaps here. There's no one here that's taking these jobs for everything that I just told you. And here's the part. So glad you stuck to here. When I read some things on LinkedIn, and they were borderline, okay? And these were CPAs and well-respected. But when I'm reading this and they're saying, I'll only hire American CPAs, and we need to protect the American CPA. What reality are you in based on everything I just told you, first of all? Second of all, it's a designation. I'm proud that this designation is sought after now globally. Are you kidding me? Like, that's how powerful the CPA designation is. That people in other countries want the US CPA designation. How valuable does that make it now to be a CPA actually in the US? And that's where there's the opportunity for you, whether you go CPA or EA, because there's less and less and less in America. Here's how I protect my family's legacy. What the AICPA is doing. It went global. They thought ahead. They ensured that those that CPAs are hiring here are qualified. Time out. We're going to go to a part 2. And so with that being said, you got a link below. There's a link right here. There's a link at the end. Just got some good stuff to share with you. I'm going to share with you a conversation I had with myself, okay, that I think you'll find a little funny. And I'm going to talk about what the underlying issue is that I told you earlier with the CPA, the real pain point here in America, and how really it all cohesively fits together. So I hope you'll check out that next video. All right, hey, thanks for tuning in. I'd love it if you'd subscribe. And then don't you ever forget, you've never met anybody quite like you, and you've never met a CPA quite like me. You have a great one.